LSxHummer Show.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching again. I'm here with the K5, the Humvee, and I would love to tell you that I'm up here today at the shop to work on the Blazer, but that's not really the case. I am going to work on it a little bit, but I have to clean this place up because if I'm going to keep this and rebuild this, I can't do it in this mess. So it was fine when just the Hummer was in here, but it's not a big shop. So having the Hummer and the Blazer in here, let me just show you. So we've got the K5 top, which wasn't restored, the back seat, which is just a bench now. You've got the Hummer, tools, Blazer, and then air-conditioned space for shelves and whatnot. But I've got, the floor is the most important part. Just stuff everywhere. So I'm gonna spend today cleaning up, and look at there, you got some Humvee wheels back in the corner. And try to get this place where I can actually get both vehicles in this space right here so I can work on them side by side. Because the transfer case for this one is on its way. The transmission should be right after that, and then I can start on this. I've got a ton of parts for this thing on the way. And I'm gonna show you something, because on the last video, I believe it was the last video, I showed you some wiring that was exposed, soldered, and just wrapped in electrical tape. And I have found a lot more since then. So let me show you that. All right, so here is one of the relays. Now this relay goes on to power this relay, because you need a relay for a relay for a relay for a relay. But check out this wiring job. Yeah, I've already taken the electrical tape off of that to see where it goes. But look at the electrical tape. Just, somebody take the electrical tape away from this guy. Like, he's using entire rolls. This one goes from a nice loom. Should be heat shrink, but it's electrical tape. And that's one wire. That's just a single blue wire. Down at the bottom, you can see right here, the black. That's where the paint has wrinkled up and it just came off when I smeared my finger. Around this, you can see the rust. I tell you, man, it is like nothing I have ever seen. Even if I did want to sell it, I could not right now in good conscience give this to someone or sell this to someone, because now what you haven't seen is one night I came up here and I took the entire external wiring harness out of this truck. So let me show you what I found there, because you know, this is headlights, turn signals, brake lights, went to the starter, pretty much everything from the fuse block that's on the outside of the truck. So let me show you what I found there. All right, so this is for the electric fan relay, and it's a red wire that goes to a gray wire that then goes to a white wire. Now, all of the black marks, that's the electrical tape. The entire wire was in electrical tape, but there was one section that was doubled up, and I was like, why would you double up electrical tape on a wire in the middle of a harness? Oh, that's why. You stripped the insulation off of the wire, but instead of running a new wire or fixing it, you just wrapped it in electrical tape. And I don't understand, like, if you do that, why not just snip it here or here and rerun this whole thing? Because, I mean, you went from white to gray to red. It ain't like you're staying in color. There's a lot of that. So there's a lot of wires that are wrapped all in electrical tape. This is not harness wrap. Harness wrap is not electrical tape, and electrical tape is not harness wrap, and they should not be used to replace one another. Again, we go from electrical tape to an actual loom, which I love this loom, but he ruined the harness. You've got some, now these were for the windshield wiper motors. You just zip tie the loom and let it fray out the top. That looks really good. This is classy. I like the way that looks. Garbage. I don't know what any of this goes to because they change colors halfway through. Let's look at some of the lighting wiring. So this was the headlight, the passenger headlight, I believe, and maybe not. Let me look. Yeah, passenger headlight. So you've got shrink wrap electrical tape, wires sticking out. You got these wires who the hell knows what they do. You've got wires on wires on wires. That's a ground wire. These were actually in good shape, but again, they're just butchered all to death. So yeah, I pulled the harness out. I'm really glad I did, because it is one of the worst I've ever seen. I mean, one of the worst wiring jobs I have ever seen in my life. Let me see, what's the one that went to the starter? This one over here went to the starter. So there's your starter wires wrapped. I want you to focus on that electrical tape. Somebody needs to take it away from him. But I realized what happened, or why. I'm not going to say I realized why it's like this, but I realized why the guy who does the wiring at Kenwood Rod Shop does so much electrical tape. Let me show you. All right, so here I am behind the dash, and this is the HVAC. And so you notice that that's a single wire, that's a single wire, that's a single wire. All of these single wires are wrapped in electrical tape, not harness tape, but electrical tape. And I'm thinking, why would someone do that? And then I realized he gets paid by the hour, I bet. And so for him to sit there and wrap all of these wires in electrical tape one at a time, God knows how much money he's making off of Kenwood Rod Shop wrapping those wires in electrical tape. Like, I'm sure he comes to work and he's like, I bet I can squeeze an easy 3 hours additional out of the day by wrapping these things individually in electrical tape. Because no telling how long, and every wire in this truck's done that way. Every single wire is wrapped in electrical tape individually for the most part. Some of them are doubled up, some of them are tripled. But for the most part, like the speaker wires, completely wrapped in electrical tape. It blows my mind, but I did understand, like, he's just trying to make way more money on the Kenwood job, and so that's what he's doing. But I thought that was interesting. I'll show you something else about the interior, because we haven't talked about it very much, because it's finished out well, but there's still some issues. All right, so this is the back of the passenger seat. So when you're getting in, you have to move, on a K5 Blazer, you tilt the seat up. And then you get in and these hog rings are just staring you in the face. It's like, you couldn't finish that? You couldn't put some kind of finish on it? So I've taken the driver's seat out, and I've already had it reupholstered by someone who does a good job. So let me show you the way they fixed that, because I also had them re-foam the seats, and they re-foamed the seats and then put the leather back on and finished it correctly for $80. So you can't, that's a killer win. I should have taken it to them from the beginning, but let me show you how they fixed that issue. So here's the driver's seat. Now this doesn't match, which, it's down low. I don't necessarily care that it doesn't match. What I care about is the hog rings are way up under here now, and no one's going to, even from the back of the truck, I mean, you can see the hog rings they look horrible. And so now it's at least finished well. I can go back and touch up the paint on these rails. They re-padded the back portion and, am I still zoomed in here? No. They re-padded the back portion and the butt portion, because with people getting in and out over 20, 30 years, the cushion obviously wore out. So as you were driving it, you feel like you're just gonna slide out of the truck. Well, they put all new cushion, really high density foam in that seat, And now when you sit in it, you actually feel like you're driving good, you know, in control. So that's good. We've done all that. So now I'll kind of continue, and whatever else I find, I'm going to show you. Because like I said before, if it was great, I'd have shown you. And if it's not great, I'm going to show you. But we're going to continue on. I'm going to start getting this shop cleaned up is what I'm going to do. All right, so as you can tell, it is another day. I'm back up at the shop. I brought my two little ones with me. And I've got it, I'm not going to say I've got it cleaned up, but I have, let me show you, the Blazer and the Humvee. So I've got the Blazers in, the Humvees in. I've got my workbenches split up. I've got my tools in. So I've still got to organize kind of what's towards the back. I've moved all the shelves out there. I've got everything moved into the air conditioned space. I've still got this thing's in the way, but I can change out the transmission and transfer case on that. I can change out the torque converter and do some wiring on this. But before I let you go, now that I'm done cleaning the shop, I'm going to show you real quick how to fix a wire, or how a wire should be crimped. I feel like it's beneficial to some people watching this video and anybody who wants to do a wiring kit, because I've got something special here. So because the wiring in the Blazer was such a death trap, electrical fire risk, etc., etc., I'm going to put in a whole new wiring harness from American Auto Wire. So I've already got it here. Let's sneak peek it. Oh, that's a lot of wires. This is for the 83 to 87 Chevy truck, which will work for the K5. I also bought a ton of copper terminals. These are, what is that? They're plated copper terminals, non-insulated, which is what I recommend. I've got all the types I need for this. I might have to order some more. I've got some heat shrinking things I'll show you on how to do this. So let's go fix, just as an example, let's take the wire that I showed you just a little while ago, the white one that was stripped out, and show you what should have been done to fix that. All right, so here's the problem. Everybody see it? The copper is exposed in the wire, and all this black residue was electrical tape that was run from the very top to here, and we go from gray to white to, at the end of the wire, we've got red, and this went to the electrical fan relay. And so you get your cutters, and these will actually say non-insulated or insulated. You're going to cut out the section that is bad. Alright, so this is a no-no. If you are building hot rods and you think this is okay to leave in a wiring harness, you are wrong. That is a safety concern for fire. So then you take these and you strip them back. Let me grab my wire strippers real quick. Oh, we got a little bit about that. I'm gonna go about there. I'm gonna go about right about. And then you're gonna, this is a non-insulated, meaning it does not have anything around it, and you can go ahead and crimp the first one. Now when you crimp, what you're doing is you're putting the crimp towards the bottom of the connector. And so what you're doing is you're creating a smaller space at the bottom, and then all the wires real fat up at the top, so it cannot come out. Then you're going to slide your adhesive lined shrink wrap, meaning there's glue on the inside of this, so when it heats up, it actually helps create a bond to the wire and make it waterproof. And then you're going to take your other wire, you're going to put it in there. Now these are not seamed, these non-insulated butt connectors, but if they were seamed, you would put the seam on the opposite side of this little nipple right there. So you'd put the seam down in the hole and you'd push against it. So now all I have to do, I'm going to go get my heat gun, put this over, make sure it's in the middle, And then I'm literally going to heat gun it, adhesive, and then we'll test it for strength because I'm going to try to rip it apart to prove a point. Alright, so here's the end result. Now what I want you to notice is you might be able to see the glue that has come out of the shrink wrap. And that is not only helping bond or hold the wires, but it also makes it waterproof in the connection. And so the downside of this method is when you go to loop the wire, you know, it's stiff. As long as your heat shrink is, that's how long it's stiff the connection is going to be. But being that a lot of these connections were soldered incorrectly, the solder, when you load it, the solder loads down under the coating of the wire and does the same exact thing. Now what I have learned, and I will give you some advice on watching this video, is if you ever want to see how something should be done in the automotive industry, look to the marine industry, boating. Because boating, they have to make these connections good for salt water. They have to make these connections good for boats hitting the water constantly over and over. They have to make motors run at full bore all day long. You know, they don't have transmissions. They just run at 6, 7, 8,000 RPM all day. So this is how the marine industry does this. They use non-insulated butt connectors. They use adhesive lined heat shrink, and these are all waterproof connections. They do not use solder because solder can break, solder can crack, solder can come apart. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to break this wire and see the connection. Up here you can tell that this is just soldered, and look at the distance of that heat shrink. So now when you try to loop it, I mean, what, about the length of half a finger, maybe a little more. This one is I'm not saying it's a ton better, but it's about half. And when you're working in confined spaces, that makes a really big deal. So now let's try to break it. So I'm going to try to do this without knocking the camera over. So let me get it on the, there we go. So perfect example. What failed here? What failed in this connection? It had nothing to do with my splice. The wire failed. And so my butt connection is stronger than the wire itself. That is how you wire a truck, not this electrical tape garbage.